Well, hello everyone. What I'm interested in doing here is help prepare you for the final exam. And so what I thought we'd do is dial back to actually exam number 2, and this was part 2. This was the extra credit on that exam. And if you remember, there were two extra credit problems. Problem 25 asked you to solve this for z, and problem 26 asked you to identify the least common denominator that you use to clear fractions on this. So what I thought would be a wonderful thing to do here, or at least a shrewd thing, would be to solve this thing, and then to show you how it got tweaked to a slightly more difficult version in Chapter 8. So let's get after that now. So here's the problem again. And what I've done is I've rewritten it here in what I call the style of wouldn't it be nice, that technique I developed for clearing fractions in a rational equation. And that's why I have this equal sign in red to point out that it is in fact an equation. Now, notice what I've done is I parenthesized everything, and I just stretched out my fraction bars to give me room to work to put in the factors that we're going to use to cancel everything. Also, I did crack this difference of 2 squared into z minus 2 times quantity z minus 2 times quantity z plus 2. That is a chapter 5 move. So I factored the difference of 2 squares, and of course I parenthesized those quantities. So the game here is to get everything to disappear in the denominators, and the wouldn't it be nice game begins anywhere, but I'm going to begin with the first term. And I said to myself, wouldn't it be nice if we had a z plus 2 upstairs here? Because if we did, we could cancel here. And yes, it would be nice. And so since we have an equation, we can make it so by multiplying off everything by z plus 2, and that includes the other side. So everything takes on this multiplication by z plus 2. Now, I build my LCD on the fly in this technique, and since I'm multiplying everything by z plus 2, that becomes one of the factors in my LCD. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do some canceling. Now, this is where my technique is a little bit different than I've seen anywhere else, in that I kind of cancel mid-problem. But to me, that makes sense because it really cleans things up. Nothing cancels here. And so it cleans things up and points to what remains to be canceled out. Now, we no longer have a fraction here, so we're good to go. Here, however, I have a factor of z minus 2, and wouldn't it be nice if I had a z minus 2 up here? And so it would be nice. Let's go ahead and put one in. And again, everything is going to take that, including the first term, and including the term on the other side of the equation. So everything gets multiplied by z minus 2. And once again, we are looking to cancel. Nothing cancels here, of course. Here, well, we chose z minus 2 precisely to cancel that in the denominator. And we get an added bonus here, and that this cancels. Now, check it out. We no longer have any fractions. We've completely cleared fractions, and we did it by multiplying through by z plus 2 times the quantity z minus 2, and that is our LCD. The next step here is rather simple. All we do is copy and get rid of all our stricken out items here. And when we do that, we end up with a equation that is no longer a rational equation. And I think you know where we're going here. We're actually back in, I think this is section 5.1. You're going to multiply these two binomials here, and you're going to distribute this multiplication here. Now, you're going to get 4 terms when you do this multiplication, and here is what we get. And now we are looking to, of course, combine like terms, and that throws us back into, well, all the way back into chapter 1, where we learned to combine like terms. Notice that the result of this addition, or subtraction, or however you want to think about it, is going to be simply 1z. But over here I have a minus z. So the net effect of those three things, those three terms, is that they go to 0. And so on the left-hand side, I'm simply going to have z squared minus 6. And that is, in fact, my next look-see. And now something nice happens here, and that is that we can subtract z squared from both sides. And so in effect, we're subtracting z squared from both sides. We end up with this. 2z is equal to negative 6. And you know, we're almost home. If I asked you what times 2 gives you negative 6, I'm sure you'll agree with me. The answer is negative 3. And so that's the answer. And I was really pleased to see many of you got this on exam 2, and that's a good indication that you're going to get the one on the final exam. There's a couple things I want to talk about before I show you a similar one on the final. First, check your answers. And the reason is twofold. Your answers may be wrong, or they may not be legit. And what I mean by that is, no time in this problem did I talk about the fact that there are certain numbers that z simply can't be because they'll create division by zero. And we have to exclude those. And as long as I check my answers, I don't really have to memorize that rule. I will find it out when I come up here and I let z equal -3. And as it happens, z equals -3 is a legit answer, and as it happens, it also checks. So check your answers. Now, let's move on and let me show you what's coming as we head towards the final. Notice it's a rational equation, and the game once again will be to clear fractions by multiplying both sides judiciously. And when you do that, you should be able to simplify this into a quadratic equation. That is to say, we're going to have an equation in x squared. In the preceding one I just worked, the z squared terms subtracted away. Here, the x squared terms are not going to subtract away. You're going to end up with a quadratic. So that's why this thing is more difficult than the one you saw on exam 2. And it's going to take a little more work after you get to this point to get to the next point. Now, also in that first chore, you need to identify the least common denominator. What is it that you multiplied everything by? Two clear fractions. And then, okay, here we go into the second part here. Can you solve the quadratic by factoring? That would be 5.8 in chapter 8. And if you can't, can you solve it by running the quadratic formula? That's pure chapter 8. And then lastly, of course, you need to ask yourself, are your answers good? And that will involve making sure your answers don't create a 0 here in the denominator. Obviously, x can't be 0 and x can't be 2/3, or else that's what's going to happen. So here's I would say a absolutely outstanding barometer for your mastery of this course, and I would also say for what's ahead of you. I'd say you're totally plus totally ready for 122's final and for Mat 151 college algebra. Good luck with it. I hope to help you more on this as we move along.